what is the fallout like in your family?
It's kind of hard. Well, a lot of stuff is hard for me to remember. But like from as far as I could tell, everything seemed to be fine for the most part. When my father died, and my mom didn't really know what to do. She did whatever she could do. Me and my brothers and my sisters, we all still were pretty tight knit. But the rest of the family that my father spoke with, and kept us all communicating and together, and like going on vacations to go visit them all, that just quite literally disappeared. I didn't know what to do. That was like my first actual understanding of the existence of death, like the end of a person and that you'll never get to see them again. And it blew my mind. Like it broke me on a certain level. So at that point then that's when I started to think about a lot of things. I started to think about, like, what's going to happen if I die? Well, if my father is in heaven, then could I just go be with my father? And so then I started to want to die myself just so that I could go be with my dad in heaven. But it was like I was 10 years old. There was not really much in my mind that, things made sense on a level of simplicity. Then I became ridiculously self-destructive. I was slowly but surely becoming a little hoodlum. And it didn't really stop. It just got worse. And it was a few times where I tried to hang myself. I tried to kill myself once. And I tied a rope around my neck and I gave a little leap. And the rope was way too long because I wasn't thinking ahead about anything like that because I was like 10 years old, around 10 or 11 years old. At 10 years old, I do specifically remember like just wandering around the streets at night. I would sneak out. I would go hang out with all the guys that just walk around in the streets. They would get drunk. They would do drugs. And they thought that it was really funny to have this little kid get drunk and do drugs. So I used to just get drunk and do drugs with guys in the street. Though I do have a faint memory of someone like giving me acid at some point, like when I was 10 years old. They thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious too, but in a weird way. It was a very interesting experience. In my mind, after a while of being a part of it all, you start to not really think that getting drunk or doing drugs at that age is a really big deal. You don't even really think of it as being illegal because it's just the things that you do every day. I remember pretty distinctly when I was 15, my mom and I got into a pretty bad fight. And it was one of those things where I was like, well, I can do whatever the fuck I want. I'm a big boy. And she was like, well, then get out. The same thing would just kind of happen over and over again. Like I might end up getting a job and then I'll be at that job for a little while and then I might blow a little bit of money irresponsibly and she would get ridiculously pissed off and then she would kick me out. And it ended up being a cycle, like an endless cycle, to the point to where there was a point to where I consciously decided just simply never to go back again because it would happen again. It gets a little fuzzy because that chunk in time is all smushed together into a big foggy mess. And so there was plenty of times where there was quite literally just nowhere to go. And those places normally were, normally if it was in the summertime or the springtime, fall, wasn't really so bad. But when it got around wintertime, then that's when it got bad. But, weeks on end, I would end up having to just sleep outside. There were points in time where I would spend many weeks just outside. Every once in a while I would try and sleep in like a shelter, but one time in a shelter I woke up with a guy just about to wring my neck, and so I never went back to a shelter from then ever again. He had his hands just right here at my neck, and I woke up and I stared at him and he looked very surprised. And then he started screaming, "I'm sorry," over and over and over again, and then started pacing, and I left. And I never went back to a homeless shelter ever again. The other times, then I would just walk around and go, sometimes I would randomly meet people and these people would think that I'm pretty cool, and so then they would take me off to random parties and then we would just hang out and get stoned and get drunk, and sometimes I would find myself in places in strange towns, like I wouldn't even know where I was at all, but just in a house full of junkies, just doing nothing all the time for long periods. But eventually someone would flip out about something or other, or I might get in trouble because I slept with someone's girl or something like that, and then the shit hits fan and then you gotta leave again. And it was a lot of stuff like that over and over again. And it kind of became very well known for being like ridiculously reckless and crazy because I was looking to die. It had gotten to a point to where I even started fighting for money. I was a really big kid, and there was a handful of guys that had gambling addictions, and they had like a ring in some basement type place where they used to just get a bunch of guys together and beat the shit out of each other for money. There was plenty of situations like that would happen. I usually end up getting into fights sometimes with dude with knives. I carried a couple of knives on me for the reason of, possibly getting into a scuffle with something might be serious. And people got cut up pretty bad. I've got a handful of scars myself. There was a good handful of violence and all that. Part of it, still kind of my fault, I feel like. Well, at the same time, not. It's so hard to debate exactly what was going on. I was kind of purposefully getting myself into really reckless situations because of the situations that I had put myself into, kind of. And, but at the same time, after having burned my bridges and felt like completely and totally rejected by society, I suppose, they, I felt like at the same time I didn't really have a choice anymore. Like I felt very ostracized by everybody else. People would kind of give me the time of day. People would think I was a little weird, so they wouldn't talk to me anymore. And so, I don't know. I just felt like that there was nothing else that I could do except just kind of be in the streets. I would often think to myself that I was probably going to be out there, and then as much as I wanted to die, like I would think about like, this is it. This is going to be every single day. It's just going to be similar to this and full of maybe some random junk, and then somehow I'm going to die. I was hoping that somebody would kill me. And then the few times that I actually had a serious brush with death, I felt the pure fear of death. Like, that possible instinct inside of me had kicked in finally. There was a couple of times where it really didn't. But finally there was a point when I was cut up and I was bleeding pretty bad that I was still fighting, and I remember seeing the white start to cave in the edge of my vision. I was losing consciousness, and these guys were beating the daylights out of me, and I had like complete total raw fear of understanding that was going to be the end. And something kind of changed in my mind at that point. I don't know if that's what changed, that's what made me really want to try to do things to try to live. It didn't really do that so much, but that fear was something that I had never really experienced ever in my life up until that point. To be honest, there isn't anything else like that fear at its purest form. There's nothing like that in life.